Hey y'all, it's Kate from LoveStory here, and today I am checking in on January 26th. Today is Tuesday. I know I missed a couple days, but I'm back and checking in now. So, yesterday's reading quote comes from, again, the book Cowboys Are My Weakness, and it's from the short story What Shock Heard. I read this back in 2014, and I love this book. It's available in our store. Online store, The Literary Apothecary. You can find the link in the description with a discount code too. The quote says, "In the summer, the sun never seemed to fall. It seeped toward the horizon and then melted into it." And if you've ever seen a sunset like this, you know exactly, you can have that picture, that imagery in your mind. You know exactly what she's talking about here. So now onto our check-ins. I've got so much to update you all about. So first, The Rise of Magicks by Nora Roberts. I finished this actually this morning, and so let me just get you all caught up with what happened, and then we'll talk a little bit about it, but there will also be a dedicated review for this book and also for the series coming later. So this was book 3 of the Chronicles of the One series, the last book. In chapter 20, we see that the New Hope crew took New York by surprise. Fred and Arliss's news station was still standing and protected from when they were there, 20 years ago now. Colin has lost an arm in battle, but Phelan was able to reattach it in like leather form, so now he's got like a leather arm using her magic with Lena and Ethan's help. In chapter 21, Mick is killed by Petra, and we get 2 really good quotes from Malek to Phelan, and it says, "Even in triumph, sorrow that deep cuts to the heart." And we also see Mick say, "To kill with a sword coated in vengeance leads to the shadows." And these are 2 of my favorite Malek quotes. As you know, Malek is my favorite character. He still is through book 3. I just love him. He's just got so much wisdom for Phelan, and he's a fantastic character. So we also see in chapter 21 that White and the PWs and the Dark Uncannies are at New Hope with hundreds, and they are planning to attack, kill, and especially kill Phelan, who is not there, but they don't know that. In chapter 23, we learn that they have successfully defended New Hope against the raiders and their crew, and that White has turned out to be Allegra in disguise. Jeremiah White is dead, and Allegra has just been posing as him to rally up these troops against Phelan and her crew. There's no damage or casualties on the New Hope side, just a few injuries. Phelan then flies in the air and killed Allegra, and then we learn that she found her wings, actual wings, in Wales, where Malek is from. She took like all this time off after New York to regroup her mind and mourn Mick and all of this, and we learn that she went to Wales, where Malek is from, and she found his childhood home, and that's where she found her wings. And then we get the last couple chapters of the book. We see that Phelan and Duncan and Tonya go to Scotland once again and defeat Petra and the dragon, and they defeated the dragon with the way that the Vivian from Montreal told them to, and it's just wrapped up nicely in an epilogue that I didn't think was really needed. We could have just ended it at the end with the final defeat and them going back to New Hope. But we had to have this epilogue that just said, you know, everyone lived happily ever after. But we knew that because this is the end of the book, and, you know, that's it. So the ending was a little bit disappointing for me. I thought like that final battle with Petra, we already knew how they were going to kill the dragon because Vivian went into such detail on how to kill it earlier in the book. So we knew this was just a repeat of things that we already knew. So I felt like Nora Roberts could have done a better job at that. Maybe had the battle shown through Vivian, or, you know, learn later that Phelan knew how to defeat the dragon because of this conversation with Vivian, instead of having the very detailed conversation with Vivian and then going to this battle and seeing it again in exact detail. Overall, I gave the Rise of Magicks 4 out of 5 stars. Editing Kate here, so I have to come in and say that once I went back and thought back on the Rise of Magicks, and I was getting ready to do my review for that, which I'll link here, of course, I realized that I knocked it down to 3.5 out of 5 stars and not 4 stars like I'd originally said in this video, so I just had to come in with a quick little blurb to say that my final rating is 3.5 out of 5 stars and not 4 out of 5 stars. So I thought it was a good book. It had a lot of emotion to it, which I really appreciated. But I thought the battles were far too short. The character deaths were not enough for the importance that I felt like Nora Roberts was trying to build up. Felt like she spent a lot of time on the other parts of the books, the more side parts that I would consider, and less time on the actual battles and the wars and the death. Series as a whole, I'd probably give it 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was decent, but it wasn't fantastic, I would say. I enjoyed reading it, but I'm glad it's done. Like I said, reviews are coming for both this book and the series probably tomorrow, Wednesday. By the time you see this, it'll already be up, so I'll link it in the description and also above in the card, as I usually do. 0.5 out of 5 stars for Chronicles of the One series. Next up, this weekend I started Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, and this is a buddy read with Gregory LaPerch's Discord, and I'll link that down below if you want to join in. We're reading it in January, but I think he might keep the chat open for anyone that wants to join late. I've only just started this weekend, so I'm very, very early in the book, as you can see. But as you know, I'm very new to Brandon Sanderson still. I've read the first 2 books of the Mistborn series, and that's all. So I'm excited to see something different by Brandon Sanderson, and I'm told that this is more of a sci-fi rather than fantasy book, so I'm excited to get into that. And it has, let me get to it, a great map at the start. You know how I love maps. So before we get the epilogue, the prologue, we have this map, and I don't know if you can see it, but I just love it. It reminded me of like a video game map. It just has, it's like kind of like a Minesweep. It has very blocky, Lego-like buildings, and I thought it was a cool map. It was a different map. It wasn't as detailed as some of the other maps, but it kind of gives you an idea of what we're going into in this book, and it's got that kind of sci-fi feel because it's very blocky and video game-like. So I started this weekend. I'm through, I think, 2 chapters of it now. I got a quote from chapter 1 to read off to you. That quote says, "It turned out that strange little girls grow up to be strange young women." And I don't really know much about this book, so I can't really tell you a lot. I can read off the description on the back. Says, "Defiance is survival. Spence's world has been under attack for decades. Now pilots are the heroes of what's left of the human race, and becoming one has always been Spence's dream. But her fate is intertwined with that of her father, a pilot himself who was killed years ago when he abruptly deserted his team, leaving Spence's chances of attending flight school at slim to none. No one will let Spencer forget what her father did, yet fate works in mysterious ways, and an accidental discovery in a long-forgotten cavern might just provide her with a way to claim the stars." And so that's really exciting. I can't wait for this book, this buddy read with Gregory LaPerch and all my friends there. And yeah, it sounds like a cool series. I'm told it's supposed to be like this is book 1 of, I think, 4 books in this series. So I can't wait to continue on this. And then lastly, this is a long check-in because there's a couple days and there's a lot to check in about. But lastly, we've got a check-in on The Eye of the World. Yes, I'm still reading this. I'm still making my way through this. I'm still very excited about this. Just 2 quick notes. So the legends of the fog that we get in the middle of the book reminded me so much of Mistborn. There's so much just in this book alone that reminds me of Mistborn. I love seeing that influence. It's so exciting. And then chapter 26, we learn Tom the Gleeman is dead, and this is like, looking back on it, reflecting on it now, I'm really sad about it because I like Tom the Gleeman. But when I read it, I didn't even realize at first that Tom the Gleeman was dead. I had to go back and see, like, oh crap, he is dead. So that's my check-in for now, and I will picking up some more books from the library today. I can't wait, and I'll check in with y'all again very soon. Bye. That's Kate from LoveStory, and checking in on January 28th. Checking in for yesterday. So yesterday's daily reading quote comes from the book Cowboys Are My Weakness, short story by the same name. I read this back in 2014, and the quote says, "If I were a painter, I'd paint that picture just to see if the girl in the doorway would turn out to be me." And I just loved that quote when I read it back then. Now checking in on Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. So I finished part 1 yesterday, and we learned that Spencer learns that the pilot's test that she's been studying to take this whole time has been rigged so that no one will ever pass her, because her dad was essentially, they consider him a traitor to the country. He ran and got killed in the war, and he's the traitor that everyone hates now. But then at the very end of the part 1, Spencer learns that her father's old partner is going to admit her into his class because he sees potential in her. So she's going to be able to take these pilots classes after all, and that's huge news to Spencer. So then in the Eye of the World, in chapter 29, Perrin is having trouble, a lot of trouble. He's hearing like these weird voices and thoughts in his head, and he thinks maybe it could be the wolves talking to him, but he's not 100% sure. So I'm interested to see where this goes, and how, again, still how these 2-3 storylines now meet up again. And then in the audiobook that I'm listening to, Their Eyes Were Watching God, I really love this audiobook so far. This is, like I've said before, this is a classic book written by Zora Neale Hurston back in, I think, the 50s. And the audiobook just gives you that oral history traditional feel of just this older person sitting there telling you the stories like when you were a kid. It's narrated by the legendary actress and activist Ruby Dee, and just listening to the audiobook, I get swept away by the story, and it feels, like I said, it just feels like I'm sitting by the fire listening to a story being told to me, and I just love it. So that's my quick check-in for today, and I'll check in with y'all again tomorrow. Bye. From LoveStory, checking in on January 30th. Today is Saturday. So our reading quote comes from the classic The Heart of Darkness. Now I know a lot of people have difficulties with this classic because there's a lot of problematic themes and content, but this quote just stood out to me because of the imagery in it. The quote says, "His face was like the autumn sky, overcast one moment and bright the next." So now onto our reading. In Skyward, so something really exciting, at least exciting for me, happened. In chapter 8, we found out that Spence's dad's old partner, who said like he would get her into flight school now, his last name is the same as mine, Captain Cobb. And I don't think this has ever happened to me before. If it has, I don't remember it. But I was so excited when I read this because, like, what are the chances that you'll find your last name in a Brandon Sanderson book? So I was so excited, and I didn't get hardly the response that I thought I was going to get with all my friends on Discord. But Howard was like, yeah, that is totally exciting. So at least I had one person that was as excited as I was. So now he is Spence's teacher in flight school. And then in chapter 9, we learned that the Krell are attacking, and it's now up to the cadets to defend their city, town, whatever you call it. But then we learn very soon that there's actually like real fighters that are on their way. They just got stuck in the shoddy elevator that keeps getting broken down. So now the cadets are basically just there as a decoy for the crowd to believe that there's more reinforcements coming than there actually are. Also, Jerkface, what a great call sign. I laugh every single time I see that. And it happens a lot because he's one of the kind of main side characters in here. But Spencer came up with that call sign because she hated this guy. He was a jerkface, and I just love it. And we also learned that Spencer can take classes in flight school, but she can't stay with the rest of her class or eat there or anything else. She can just go to class and that's it. And that's part of their kind of discrimination against her because of her dad, who they thought was a traitor. And I've sensed something coming around about her dad that will change people's minds by the end, but I haven't gotten that far yet. Just a quick note on Skyward. So like I've said before, I really enjoyed the quick prose of this. It's an easy read and the chapters are short, but also like Brandon Sanderson does such a good job of getting into Spence's mentality and just taking us straight there. I don't know if it's the first person prose or just the way he embraces her age and her mentality, but I really enjoyed that part the most out of anything in this book so far. And it didn't feel that way so much in Mistborn, which is my only other Brandon Sanderson experience right now. In Mistborn, Vin just always felt like way more mature than her age, and that's partly her character, but also I think partly the writing in it. But I'm enjoying seeing Spencer as Spencer, the young girl, and now in flight school here. So I'm really enjoying that. I'm gonna keep reading, and I hope to get a really good chunk out of this through this weekend. So then next up is just a really quick note on Eye of the World. So I'm really confused about what's happening here. I think I understood that Perrin becomes Hopper the Wolf, but doesn't know that, like, he thinks maybe this happened, maybe it didn't happen. I have no idea what happened. But one of the things that I've come to realize about this book, Eye of the World, and the prose of Robert Jordan is that I'm enjoying it when I'm reading it, but I'm not excited to get into it just like I was before. But what made me, the new mentality that I have while reading the Eye of the World, is it's kind of like those good classics that you enjoy reading but you're not like super excited to read. So I am going to move forward with the Eye of the World, thinking of it more as a classic instead of like a fantasy book that everyone loves, because not everyone loves Eye of the World because it is a really long book and different prose than other fantasy books you'll get today. Granted, it was written back in what, the 90s? So I'm thinking of this more in terms of a, I guess, modern classic and that kind of writing style, as opposed to some of the other fantasies that I will be reading this year. So that helps me enjoy this prose and the writing a little bit more. But that's my check-in for now. And I finished one book, The Rise of Magicks, which then finishes off a series for me, which is great because, as you know, and I'll have more videos about this coming hopefully soon, I've got so many series started and so many series that I want to start in 2021. It's nice to just to be able to say, hey, I finished a series already. So that's it for now. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, tell all your friends, keep reading, and I love you all to the moon and back.